So it's the 1 meeting a year where the superintendent gets to be the center of attention, right? I get to get us started and moving through here. So from 6 to 6:05, I'm supposed to ensure that we have a quorum. We do. Reviewing the meeting purpose. This is the board reorganization meeting, and it's the facilities monitoring report are the biggies that are happening here. We'll report from Kara, our Brookfield principal, and some other odds and ends. And then when we look at our agenda, you can see that under ownership linkage, we'll accept public comments, and then board members will introduce themselves, and then we'll get a chair, and my moment of glory will be over. Report on town meeting days, the Brookfield Elementary presentation. Under board process, we'll review the board expectations, rules, and orientation. Under the board education, we've got the accelerator module, number 4. Monitoring the organization is executive limitation 2.7 and the quarterly facilities report. We're not going to bring you any new policies today. You've got your self-evaluation, and then we have the consent agenda, which is a variety of minutes and new hires. In closing, I'll bring you the superintendent's report. I will note that right here, there's also a financial report in your packet, although it's not reflected in the language here, but I will add that right now. And then
with the superintendent's report.
Yep, you bet. And then we have a very quick executive session around contract negotiations for the non-union contracts. Anybody want to add anything else or change anything up? Okay. Well, then I will open us up for public comment.
Do you read the preamble?
Oh. Hannah tells me I'm a little bit of a rookie here. Here it goes. All right. The board welcomes comments, but is not able to take any action on them other than to direct the public to the appropriate staff member or to the complaint procedure. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Time may not be ceded to another speaker. Comments are to be addressed to me, the board chair, or the board as a whole, not to any individual on the board or on the staff or in the public. Please raise your hand and wait to speak until you are asked by me. Please identify yourself with your first and last name and your town of residence. Please refrain from restating comments that have already been shared. You can express agreement with those comments. Order and decorum shall be observed by everyone. Shouting and profanity are prohibited. As I will maintain the order and decorum of the meeting. Hannah has better eyesight than I do.
And you'll remain ordered.
What's that?
And you'll remain ordered.
I will try. I will try for sure. All right. So now public comment. Going once, going twice, gone. At this point, before we move into the actual reorganizing part, it's a great opportunity to have each board member introduce themselves, what town you're from, and anything else you think we ought to know, I guess, maybe. Right? One end or the other. What do you think? Perfect.
I'm Rachel Fish, also a representative from Braintree.
I'm Ann Kaplan. I am a representative from Rhino.
I'm
Ryan Anderson, and I'm from Brookfield, over on the Hill.
Sam Hooper, also Brookfield, also East Hill.
Hannah Arias, I represent Randolph, and I'm not going to give my address.
Emil Parmalee, also representing Randolph, and I live up in the center.
So thank you, board. We really appreciate that you all have run and got elected and are part of the education community and decision making. And we appreciate all the time and expertise you give and bring. With that said, I'm going to work really quickly to get myself out of the hot seat here. And the first thing that I am going to do is look for a nomination for the chair position. I hear a nomination. Do I hear a second of that nomination?
I'll second.
All right, so I got Rachel with the nomination, Sam with a second. Are there any other nominations? Okay, hearing no other nominations, is there any discussion?
Hannah, you do a great job.
Hannah, do you want to do it?
I accept the nomination. Yes, thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Hannah, you have just unanimously been elected to the chair position, and I'll pass the proverbial gavel to you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you all very much.
Woo.
I appreciate it.
At this time, I will entertain nominations for vice chair.
I would like to nominate Ann Kaplan.
Also, I will accept.
Accepted and seconded by Martha. Other nominations? Hearing none, all of those in favor of electing Ms. Ann Kaplan as vice chair, please audibly and visibly, aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. I will now entertain nominations for the position of clerk. Let me just, because there is a new member, I'll just say a little bit about the clerk. Not a huge job, but in Kyle's absence, if that should ever occur, which please never, the clerk would take minutes in the regular meeting and also is responsible for reporting if we go into executive session, if there's a vote that comes out of it, and those minutes go to Kyle. I will now hear nominations.
In keeping with tradition, I will nominate our newest member, Martha Hafner.
Martha, do you accept the nomination?
I really might be a little bit filled in on exactly what all that entails, but.
It's a little bit of it. Real quick.
Well,
And there's no judgment if you don't want to accept the nomination. It's not, it's an honor to be nominated, right?
I will think.
You will. Okay. Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded from Sam. Further discussion? All those in favor of Martha Hafner as clerk, audibly, visibly?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. So regular meetings, second Wednesday of every month. That's what they've been, although last year we did adjust that a bit. So this isn't set in stone. If anyone wants to say, hey-oh, Wednesdays aren't great for me. We're a small group, so please feel comfortable in saying that and we'll work around it. All right.
I'm just showing you where I got that.
I think we just, those are our meetings.
Yeah, I think in the organizational meeting.
We vote on it all.
Says
You-
approved.
You do.
Yeah, okay, we do. All right, so I'll entertain a motion to accept the meeting schedule.
So moved.
I heard Emil first. Do I have a second? Rachel Gatus, thank you. Further discussion? All those in favor, visibly audibly?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. We need to assign a member to sign official documents when I am not available. That currently is Anne as vice chair.
I didn't have to do any.
No, because mostly we do them here and I've done.
I don't
couple.
mind doing.
Oh, thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Emil. All those in favor, please visibly audibly. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Anne. We need to appoint an RTCC representative who is currently Anne. Those meetings are quarterly. It is an advisory board.
It's a one box.
Yep. And because you're a community member.
With state law regulations about what our duties are.
What your duties are. Yes. Okay, I found that on the documents. So first I'll ask Anne, are you interested in continuing in
I
that
would
position?
like to continue to do
You would. So is anyone else interested? And if so, you can, with Anne, go out to the parking lot and, figure it out. All right, can I have an official nomination, please?
I would love to nominate Anne to be our RTCC representative.
Thank you. Do I have a second? No. Thank you, Sam. Seconded. All those in favor, visibly audibly? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Anne. The teacher contract negotiating committee, negotiations are in full swing. Currently, myself, Emil, and Sarah Hopt was serving on it. So first I'll ask Emil, are you interested in continuing on the committee?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Okay, I am as well interested in continuing on it. Is there anyone who is interested in joining us?
I will step up to the plate.
Thank you, Sam. Self-nominated, Sam Hooper. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Emil. All those in favor, visibly audibly?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Beautiful. Welcome. Thank you. Support staff contract negotiation committee, also in full swing. Currently, Anne, Rachel Gatis, and Ryan are serving on that committee. Are you interested in continuing to serve on? Thumbs up.
Good.
Nod. And smile. Good. Do you want to, I'm making a joke. You'll do your duty. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and nominate Ann Kaplan, Rachel Gatis, and Ryan Anderson to serve as the support staff contract negotiation committee. Do I have a second? Second, third, and fourth. I'm going to give it to Rachel Fish. All those in favor, visibly audibly.
Think,
Oh, sorry. Yes,
I have a question.
certainly.
Is that something, I mean, I was asked to consider one of these before this meeting, and I narrowed it down and I debated. That is the one that I would be interested in. Could I be there as an observer at this point, or how does that?
They are in executive session, so it's just committee members that can be present at the negotiations at this time. That was a rule that was voted in on the first meeting with both support staff and professional staff.
Are there rules that define the number of people on the committee?
there are not.
There are.
So
So are you interested in going in that committee?
That one, if that's-
Great, the support staff or the
Support staff.
support staff? Okay. So I'm going to amend my motion.
Well, I think
We didn't vote yet.
we didn't.
I don't think so.
We were in the midst
I
of
got a
voting, but
second.
nothing was
Yeah.
declared.
But we didn't vote. Or
I-
I'll entertain a motion for another nominee. Tell me what you.
I don't think you voted. I think I interrupted before you got she called for,
Once it's on there, we have to, like, once the motion
I can't amend it before we vote?
So then can we
So
vote
vote
it
it
down
down.
and put a new?
Down.
Oh, she just wants to vote something down. Yeah, we can do it.
Okay, all those in favor, visibly, audibly. This is exciting. Opposed? Say nay.
Nay.
Raise your hand, nay.
So,
Great. It does not
does it make-
pass.
so does it make sense for us? Yeah, so does it make sense for us? to keep three people? I really don't mind. I don't mind.
I would take advantage of this opportunity to get off that committee then.
But that's the nature of it. So do we want more people on?
There's
I think you
no,
feel strongly about a number.
Three's
Feel
fine.
strongly about a number.
How many are on the other side? Does it end up being a scenario where you have?
There was-
odd numbers?
there was-
There was,
There was 3 last time, but the time before that, there was like 6.
That was the combined one, wasn't it?
No.
Oh,
So it's the
oh,
second
oh.
time that they were together
So
too.
it's really not very sustainable.
Support staff.
that's true.
It's very diplomatic and also very interesting.
and neither 3 nor 4 are quorum. So, and, you know, it's, a committee is to bring recommendations to the full board to vote on, which is voting that happens in a committee. So if you want to make a motion with a certain number of members, you are welcome to. Anyone is. I'll entertain a motion.
Does it limit any future out of conferences? Maybe we
Mm-mm.
don't want to turn it down, so that- Again,
I move that we keep the standing committee and have fun.
I'll second.
Okay, sorry, that's my view. Further discussion. All those in favor of the 4-person committee, please visibly, audibly, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Abstentions. Thank you. And thank you, Martha and Michael, for the reminder that I don't have to go quite so fast, so I can see questions. So we're done reorganizing.
did my name get added?
Yes. And Michael or Kyle will be in touch with the next meeting, right? Date and time and location.
Will do.
Great. Thank you. Report on town meetings and votes. If I could, just want to take a moment and on the record, thank the communities of Randolph, Brookfield, and Braintree for approving the budget that was put before them on voting day. This was a really tricky budgeting season, and the support shown by the community is inspiring. I'm grateful on a personal note, and I think I speak for the entire board, that we appreciate the yes vote, the passage. I also want to mention all of the hard work that went into the budget. Michael, Heather, the cabinet, that was a big lift. So thank you, much appreciated. And I'm glad that the community could approve your work. Yeah. Did you want to say anything about?
I think I echo the process that we followed and that the community spoke, and I appreciate all the folks that turned out and gave input as we went. And I know in this kind of vote that it was a lot of individual conversations happening and whatnot. So I really appreciate the process. I appreciate the process that the board followed. I think that the way that we went about what would the reductions look like was a really respectful way to our faculty and staff. I'm in the process now of developing and tracking down exactly which people are going to get RIF notices and what that exactly looks like based on seniority and whatnot. So I appreciate that you put together a budget that was respectful of the educational process and of the financial aspects within the community. So kudos to you all as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we have a presentation from the principal of the wonderful school that we sit in now. So, Ms.
How would
Houston,
you, the last time I did this, I logged on.
Are you trying to present?
Yes.
Yep.
I mean, it's 5 slides. It's not that impressive, but.
Yeah, I think if you jump on, you can present. You'll need to mute and turn your sound off, or we'll get a lot of feedback.
and if you want to sit there, chairs on either end, you can stand, you can do some choreography, whatever.
Oh, I know. Me, just. Everybody. I know, it's gonna be hard to go back and forth. It's only 5 slides. I kept it simple for you all. I know that it's a lot to hear what's going on in every school on top of the many things that you should do here. Jump right in after. Thank you for having. That the sun's still up and you're adjusting okay to this time change if you have children. Got this. It's always the hardest. I get it. So I'm gonna jump right in. Our school is really proud to be continuing and honoring our enriching and loving traditions. I spoke a lot about that in our town report, but I want to also show you some pictures and just give you a rundown of what we've been doing. These traditions are what foster that strong sense of community and student engagement. Our farm to school collaboration with Ann Massey continues to promote healthy eating and environmental awareness while supporting our local agriculture. Additionally, we had presentations from Mary Lake, who is a local sheep shearer, and Katie Winters, who's a local herbalist and also a parent in our community, that they had such wonderful and informative, really fun presentations for our kids, that they just always have a really good time just soaking that information from our local community members. We continued our other traditions, such as our Thanksgiving feast to celebrate gratitude and share a festive meal. We continued with our community circles to really reinforce that PBIS focus that we've had throughout the school year, really celebrating their classes or individual kids and how they're promoting our school rules. And just what it means to be a citizen of the community. Of course, like our fun little smattering of like Veterans Day, Valentine's Day, those are really fun. This year we brought back the Brookfield Spelling Bee. We started small. We're hoping to build it in the next coming years. We have a 6th grade student who will be competing at the state spelling bee in a week and a half. So we're really excited for this individual. We wish them all the luck and hopefully we'll have a state winner when they're coming back, but no pressure. We also had a hiatus of our I Love to Read month. We brought that back this year with lots of really fun and engaging activities to really foster that passion for reading, which we know is really early academic success indicators for our students. These traditions not only celebrate our values, but they also create those lasting memories for our kids. We are also adjusting to some changes, actively adjusting to some changes, especially around the evolving needs of our students, particularly in response to the increased number of behaviors associated with trauma. To better support our students and address these challenges, we have developed a behavior response team to provide those targeted interventions and create a supportive environment to ensure that every student has the opportunity to. In addition, we adapted to the logistical changes with the relocation of our school program to And then throughout the budget process, we did some emotional processing as a community in regards to the consideration of Brookfield closing to consolidate the elementary schools and the impact that this may have. While we are navigating these ideas and changes with a focus on maintaining those strong relationships and supportive and learning environment, we remain committed to supporting our students and staff, ensuring that their needs continue to be met with compassion and development. Right now, we're in the midst of our PCAP testing, which has started off without a hitch, which has been wonderful. The last few years have been a little rocky start, so we're really happy to have a smooth start, and that will last for the next 4 weeks, and then we'll be done right before spring break. Our school club. Last year, for those of you who were a part of the school board, last year for my presentation, I was trying hard to build our school community and build our school club, and it's been a really nice job with that. Our membership has increased. We're doing lots of really wonderful events, both in school and outside of school. This year we've hosted some really fun and memorable experiences for our community, while also focusing on fundraising to support the various school initiatives that we have. So we kicked off the year with a Halloween movie night, and then did our stations during the day for those who were not able to attend that event. Then we had our bonfire and sledding event, which was another highlight, offering that chance for everybody to enjoy our wonderful winter weather this year. It's been really lovely, and continue to build that community involvement. We've had a really great sledding here at Brookfield. I mean, if you go out there, you'll see it's a really wonderful hill and some pretty incredible jumps that these kids make too. I did have to go out there one day and be like, that's too high, too high. You know, like we were like on the verge of X Games with one of them. It's like, no, we're not. We need to ensure our safety here. So this year, the PTO's primary focus has been on fundraising, from selling baked goods to at the Stoll's Christmas Tree Farm. If you went on Sunday, you saw some of our kids there. And that was the Sunday after Thanksgiving. And then we sold chili and cornbread at the town meeting. And so these funds are going to be going towards our school programs, like our artist in residency and our garden school for next year. We're also really excited about the upcoming auction that we'll have with our themed class baskets. We'll do that in May. And then we have a community variety show with bingo. So we'll have a bingo game and then a performance from family members or kids, bingo game performance, bingo game performance. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We're really excited for that. And that'll be happening April 25th, which will bring in more of that opportunity for family engagement. Looking ahead, we've got a lot of really great things coming up. Our school is really excited about this lineup of events and activities. We're thrilled to have our music in our schools concert, which will be on Friday, March 21st next week. And that's going to showcase our different classes. We had a really wonderful holiday music performance in December. It's just so lovely to have. So we're excited to have another one, which will only be classes. We're going to say chorus and band as a whole district for our June concert. And we'll highlight their skill and the importance of arts education. And then the 5th and 6th grade has their annual bridge building competition at BTC. And this definitely challenges their problem-solving skills and engineering skills while fostering that teamwork and creativity. So they've already started this. And so the 6th graders did it last year. And they came in hot this year, like, we're going to get over 27 pounds of pressure. So that was their highest last year. So they're determined. So it's really created a lot of excitement for graders this year too. Additionally, we'll be welcoming Brendan Tapp for our artist in residency program this year. He's going to teach our classes various contra dances, which will enrich our students' understanding of dance and cultural traditions. That will culminate in an event on Friday night where the classes will show off their dance skills with a live band, but then afterwards we'll also have a caller and dances. So if you want to come and join, so it'll give our Brookfield community a lot of fun. Then we'll have our annual, that week we'll also have the annual community read aloud, which is already being planned by our elementary librarians. That is May 14th. So we're really looking forward to that for our community to share in that joy of reading with different community members down in Randolph. And then people believe it. Friday's the end of the trimester for elementary school. And that means that we have around 60 days left of school. I know, look at your face. I know, that's how I feel. Oh my God, where did the time go? And you know, these 60 days are gonna go fast. So while we're planning all of these activities, we're also planning for next year. So we're just really making sure that that our students and staff are all set up for that continued success and growth for 25-26. It's been a really busy year. It's gonna be a really busy spring. Lots of really great things happening in Brookfield. Any questions?
I have one question. The behavioral response team, did I
Yes.
get the words right?
Yes.
So who makes that up?
Great question. One of our interventionists has a skill, and so she's our top person. Then we have our guidance counselor and myself. We have a couple of other team members who are also trained in CPI, so they might be as like a third layer of support, which is our special educator and our other academic interventionist. So it's small for, it's big for our school, but small in terms of a team.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And we do not have a behavior interventionist, so that's why we brought in our interventionist, who just has a really wonderful skill of working with our students who present with some dysregulation. So we built a really great team. Yeah. We're just
On that front, are you guys seeing trend line continuing to go up over last year?
Yeah.
Still significant time.
Yeah, so, I think it's just infiltrated the community in terms of how we need to support our kids in different ways, right? I think that we were seeing it in Randolph, last year we saw it more in Braintree, and now we're seeing it more at Brookfield. It's just natural for this to happen. So we're adjusting to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our kids. So yeah, it is in a trend, and we're working our best to make sure that trend continues to be either plateaued or go down.
Other questions, comments?
I bought a $5 brownie on meeting day.
You bought a $5 brownie,
Yeah.
or did you donate $5
There it is.
for that brownie?
And it was worth every penny.
Oh, I love that person. Recorded.
Yeah. And when is the state spelling bee?
March 24th.
March
Up at
24th.
UVM.
So cool.
Yeah. And we're gonna have the two, so what we did is we had a third grader, a fourth grader, and fourth, fifth, and sixth grader. They competed against each other, and it was really wonderful. It wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna get right, but very warm and sweet in terms of the encouragement that they provided in our little spelling bee in the classroom. And so they will also be going up to get them excited for next year, when we hope that they will compete again at the school level.
Which one ended up on top?
The sixth grader did this. Yeah, I was gonna say, can't tell you names, sorry. But if you go to UVM on the 24th, you'll see.
Brendan Tapp was there. I think I saw something in front porch forum about working with housing.
Yeah, so yes, we are looking for an individual who or family who would be willing to house. but I'm also willing to do it too. To make sure that this happens for our families and our kids, yeah.
What are the dates?
The 14th to the, sorry, not the 14th, the 12th to the 16th of May. That's not there, so, you know, if you wanna move grass, to your house for a week, really nice gentleman, really wonderful man. And then maybe you could stop by too, you know, dance a little bit.
Anyone else? Sarah, thank you
Thank you.
very much.
Yeah, happy to have you guys here anytime.
Wonderful work.
Yeah, it's a full board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm only 4 minutes behind. I just want to point that out to you.
I mean, I just
There was
told
a
you that.
challenge at the beginning of the meeting. Now I've taken time to point that out, so.
Oh. I didn't brag that I got my Visbit meeting done in an hour and a half.
No, of course you didn't. No. Review of board expectations, rules, and orientation. This is always a little, I find it odd because so much of what we do, at least for a portion of our meetings, is kind of reminding ourselves and evaluating ourselves on our expectations and rules. So, you know, I do want to say simple things, but worth being said, because I say them every day to my kids, coming prepared to the meetings, having done the trainings, having read through the entire packet. Kyle has been doing such an amazing job getting it to us, you know, as complete as can be the Friday before. So taking time and going through it, and being as prepared as possible. We are a policy governance board. We are currently, well, I'm kind of getting into the next section, but we're right in the middle. I think it's 8 modules total. So we're right in the middle of an online training. And Martha, we're figuring out how to get you caught up in it, but I bring it up. We'll talk specifically about it when we get to the board education part. But you know, it's a training that some of us have done before since joining the board, and I'm here to admit that I do not pass every module on the first try. So that is to say that it's a constant learning process, because the type of board that we are doesn't come naturally to me. So I have to remind myself of things a whole lot. You know, the biggest ones being things like we speak as one voice. So while there may be disagreements, once a decision has been made or any of our policies, that's as one voice when we're speaking out to the community. Being as comfortable and familiar with the policies, you know, I can always do a better job at that. And maybe someday I won't peek down at Anne whenever we're needing to refer to a specific policy or questioning what, if we even have one having to do with what we're talking about. Anne is a great example of knowing our policies inside and out, and sometimes raising questions about them, which I think is also what a policy governance board is about, because they should be timely. You know, we're looking at our ends right now. In this particular training, it said something like ends start getting kind of crusty at 3 years. It's been more than 3 years since we've had these, so it's really great that we're looking at them now. Do other people, and see, this is one of those times I'm going to look down the table,
Well,
want to say something kind of broad about expectations and rules?
Well, again, just calling people's attention, every board member should have a binder. And in this binder, not only are policies in here, but just are basic, just being familiar with our, how we run as a board, what our rules of procedure are, how meetings operate, what the different rules are around meetings. So just, and again, we put together the binder quite a while ago now, just so that everyone has access to that information because, we're all busy with various things. So to be able to have everything in one spot is helpful. Or if the question comes up, when are the minutes supposed to be done or whatever, all of that information is in the binder as well as our governance policies themselves and then some other resources. So just, I always find it helpful to kind of review that. And Martha as a new person, Rachel as a new person, getting familiar and maybe finding a fellow board member and emailing one of us and saying, hey, I don't get this. I don't, what does this mean? Or, why is this even in the binder? I think for all of us, I think there's to remember that we're all resources for one another as well as.
Is this this group or is
It's just,
it still?
no, it's for our board. So it's and you will be getting one, with all of those resources.
And that's an interesting thing about policy governance, which again came up in this module, that as long as we stick to the pretty strict boundaries of what how a policy governance board functions, there is, we make our own policies, but then we have to follow them or make sure they're being followed as a policy governance board needs to. Does that make sense? Yeah. Sure. I'll also say the VSBA site is a great resource. There are a lot of, turning my back, I'm sorry. What are they called? Webinars that, and some are very short, and there's one on first time board member, serving for the first time, that kind of thing, like a 101. So that's a great resource as well for general.
So I'm gonna ask again, I'm hearing, it is something that's done statewide in the SBAs.
Well, each board can adopt to be a policy governance board. So not every single school board in the state functions as a policy governance board, but it is the kind of board that the VSBA recommends. Is that a fair word to use?
That's fair.
Recommends? School boards to use, but it is not a requirement. It's not state statute that would have to be a policy governance board. Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So specifically the module.
Before you do,
Yes, please.
can I, as a superintendent, jump in here on
Yes,
some of the
please.
processes I want to make sure you're all thinking about, and once a year I'll remind you. So I remind you all that as serving on a public board, that the communications that you have, especially your written communications, are public communications. So this is where I remind you that anything that you send in an email may be subject to the Freedom of Information Act request. So imagine what you're putting down and sending in that email being on the front page of the Herald or being read on, maybe even national news. Who knows,
Well,
right?
there's also open meeting laws to consider.
Gonna get
We're
there
getting there, never
too.
mind.
Yeah.
So clarification on that. Is
Yeah.
that anything that we're putting into our Chromebooks that are part of the school network? Or is that anything anywhere that you're writing?
Well, if you're doing it as part of your role as a school board member, then it is probably subject to a Freedom of Information Act request. Whether you send it on your phone, your school Chromebook, a Chromebook somewhere else, right? Which tags along with the second part of my note here that says best to use the device that we provide you and your school account, Because if you get a Freedom of Information Act and you've only used your school account to communicate, then the pulling that information is going to be really easy for you. If you start using your phone, say you like to text and those kind of things, your texts can be subject to Freedom of Information Act requests. So just keep in mind, whatever you're doing, however you're communicating, it could be part of an open meeting request. And that brings us to open meeting law. And so open meeting law, you are an 8-member board, so a quorum is 5, which means that you as an individual can only talk about any kind of board business with 3 people that are also on the board. That includes, you can't have, hey, Rachel, Ann, and Martha have a conversation, and then Ann connects up with Ryan, Sam, and Hannah. You've just violated open meeting law, right? That's serial kind of thing. You can't send out, when you're sending out a group email, there's a very limited amount of things that you can do by email as a board, like scheduling a meeting is one of those. I can send you information as a board, but you'll always see that I put it in the board packet if I have to send you an email with information, so that kind of thing. The other piece of this that when you go to those VSBA trainings, they'll caution you about is if you're posting on a website and it looks like you're talking like a board member, you should assume that you are a board member. And if other members of the board are also communicating on the website, you're violating open meeting law. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're communicating and talking about what's happening amongst the group.
If I can just interject,
Yeah.
be very careful of the reply all option, because that will create a quorum. If an email goes out to all 8 of us, and you are going to reply to Michael to ask a question, don't reply all. That becomes a violation of open meeting laws.
I try really hard to blind copy you so that doesn't happen,
Mhm.
but I'm not perfect at it for sure. So, and then I guess we talked a little bit about the VSBA. They also, in addition to the webinars, they do different trainings, sometimes live and whatnot. All of your school board emails have been given to the VSBA, so they probably send you we're doing this now, we're doing that. Here's the weekly update or the legislative update kind of thing. So you get all of those things. And the last thing that I have for you is remember that as a board, I think Hannah said it perfectly, right? You speak as a board. And so if you get the call from the local reporter that says, hey, I understand you're on the board, what do you think about blah, blah, blah? Be really careful. I would actually encourage you to direct that person back to myself or to Hannah to say, hey, if you want to have a conversation about that, that's probably the place to do it. Unless the board, of course, has authorized you to speak for them, which you have done at different times already in the time I've been here. That's my laundry list.
Thank you. You were much more organized. Anything else people want to contribute to the expectations, rules, and orientation at this time? Yeah, great. Okay. Okay, so this module that I admit that I failed a couple of times. Yes, a couple of times. Because it's confusing. I still have trouble wrapping my head around M's, executive limitations, what it means, what it doesn't mean, all of the double negatives. It's very confusing today. And if you want to also, in our agenda meeting, I'm trying to frame this. We're all doing the training. It's kind of a check-in. It's on the agenda as a check-in. Do we need to have a conversation about the module each time? Or if someone wants to bring up, hey, I didn't get this, can you help me out with this? I got an 80%, so I passed, but I don't understand why I got this part wrong.
because of course I want to use our time wisely.
Well, I had brought up at our agenda meeting that, Dean Collins, who is a retired superintendent and now works, with boards who are using policy governance, because she was a superintendent who used policy governance. And she, as part of the accelerator program, is willing, if a board would like to zoom in, for 20 minutes or so and just review a module with the board, because sometimes it's kind of hard. We do the check-in, but, you know, are we picking up on the main points of it? Maybe you feel like you are doing fine, you passed the quiz or whatever. But she will facilitate a little bit, a discussion about the different principles that we're going over in each community. And so I was wondering if people felt like, that's going fine, it's fine with just doing the quizzes. To me, it feels like we might get more out of the process if we had a facilitator sort of guide us through as we hit each module. And then
Was Jean at CBU, was she who helped with the hiring?
no, that's,
I think you're thinking about Elaine Pinckney.
Yes.
he was at Potter Valley.
And Burlington.
Our RNBSU.
Yeah, and Burlington. Great. I think one of the things that's interesting, and I think y'all should be proud of yourselves, is you are the first board to use the accelerator in the way that you're using it. Most of the time, they open up the accelerator for a very short period of time. You're the first board that's doing a module at a time. And they actually figured out and worked with the consulting company to allow that to happen. And I think that they're a little interested to see how that's sort of unfolding and how they could make that process even stronger is likely what they're thinking.
Well, I wonder then if it's worth, I think it's our July meeting that's, if needed, or sometimes we use it as a retreat, special meeting kind of thing. And I wonder if that's the time that a conversation like this might be useful. We will have gone through each module. I cringe at taking time in a regular meeting to have a conversation like that, which is really just about board education. And I wonder if it would be more, I don't know, respectful to the public's time, and then a better use of our time if we do it during kind of a specialized, that's what this whole meeting is about, kind of format.
Yeah, I mean, at the end, right, you set up the contract, Michael.
I did.
I mean, I want to make sure we're getting our money's worth too, and I know each individual board member, is this the way it's set up? Last time we did this,
I think it's set up for that group ability at the end. I'm not sure that it's an individual, but I could check in. Yep.
Yeah, because the last time we had, you could do an individual meeting with six.
Yeah.
And then she did a group sort of review did we do that this summer? I think we did that in July.
We were in masks, that's all I remember.
Yeah.
It was on the screen.
Yeah, she was on a screen. Jeannie would, what she had mentioned to me was she would come in by screen for just a short facilitation after we finish a module. But I believe in the end, and Michael would be just that, and she'll come in person in the end of this accelerator. Right, Jeannie, is she gonna come at the end and do a wrap up of the accelerator program?
I suspect that Jeannie will do just about whatever this board wants her to do.
Okay. Well, I didn't know what the contract said, so
I will be frank that right this minute, I don't remember exactly
Okay.
how that contract was set up at that point. I knew this was something that you wanted to do. I knew that we were at a spot where the board education piece of it did not seem like, it felt like it needed a structure. So looking at this and knowing that this was an opportunity, felt like it gave the board a structure to be able to, like today, we're spending a lot of time right now talking about having somebody come in. I think that the piece of this that's powerful is you all heard about different ends and, the executive limitations and what's the difference. And then it threw in those quizzes about the means and, so yeah, I think it does kind of twist you around and say, hey, what does this look like? And how does that fit? So I think you as a board have to decide two things. What would benefit you the most? And how much time are you willing to allow for that to happen? I think that,
Thoughts?
So as a board member with a whopping 1 year of experience, it's been helpful for me to break it up, but doing one module a month, because I think if we had front loaded, it would have been in and out. And so I've had to get reoriented every month to what did we cover last month? And so I really appreciate that it's monthly. I did struggle with this, but I think it was the language piece, like you talked about, the double negatives, how they asked the questions was tricky. So this was a more difficult module than the other one. And I did not pass that quiz on the first time, and I'm so mad about it.
I was really mad.
So, but I also have a 6-year-old who's trying to build a leprechaun trap with me while I was sleeping. So
Fair.
I
It's a
probably
good
shouldn't have been multitasking.
So are people interested in asking for a facilitated conversation after a specific module? Okay, I never know. So I'll follow up with, a statement, I guess, that if we can just look at the contract and see what we'll get at the end, and in the next meeting, confirm what it'll be and if people feel like that's enough. Is
That sounds great.
there? Yeah, great. Okay. Okay, 2 point. Anyone have any lingering thoughts about module 4? Module 4. Okay. 2.7. Second read. Thoughts, concerns? Discussion to be had before a motion to accept.
I just have one question. Michael, you reported you were in partial compliance. Are we still in partial compliance?
I think we'll continue to be in partial compliance for a little bit of time because I think I reported partial compliance. And I think you saw that the note that I have there that I don't think that, I think there's the potential for some discrepancies unless you see the language that is in Goal 3, establish or change compensation and benefits that deviate materially from geographical or professional market for the skills employed, right? I think that part of the language that you have in the limitation there is deviate materially. I'm not really positive that my definition of deviating materially and yours may or may not line up. It's part of the reason that I asked for an executive session tonight to talk about non-union contracts so that I can get kind of more in line with that, and it'll take a little bit of time to fix that. I think when things deviate materially, it's hard to change a contract that's deviating materially in one go.
Right,
So,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
I don't,
I'm not saying you need to do that. I'm
No.
just saying, are we accepting this as partially in compliance with that?
I think that I'm partially in compliance.
You're partially in compliance. So the other thing, when you're partially in compliance, and again, this isn't saying you must do something, but it is sort of on the board's sort of side to get a sense from you as to when, or for the board to think about when we want to check it again. And maybe this may be something that you need to let us know in.
I think I can let you know right here when I'll be, so it depends on what materially deviate means. So if you go in and
That's your interpretation, so you interpreted materially deviating.
yes,
how-
so here, and this is where I think my belief around what policy governance is, and I'm young in the policy governance piece, is that it's important for me and you to agree on language, right? I think that for me, the material deviation is, I showed you an example of a material deviation in executive session last time around, right? And so what I would do in that scenario is I would work to bring those salaries in line with market conditions over a period of, over time, right? And probably what I would look at, it's going to depend on a number of, it depends on a number of factors. Like if this is the hard part. I guess part of this sort of bleeds into the negotiations process. You have a level where you're trying to negotiate to, and the work with the non-union folks is going to support that, right? If you're trying to negotiate, I'm going to go with crazy numbers so nobody gets confused that we're talking about crazy numbers here. If you're trying to negotiate with your union people that everybody's getting 100% raise this year, and it's a crazy number for those of you who are seeing it on a recording, it's not what they're doing, right? So for me to go and offer the non-union people a 200% increase will make your 100% increase really, no, 100% increase would be really generous. If some other group is getting a 200% increase, that's going to be pretty terrible, right? So there's a role that you play as a board in this around where you think you want to be too, right? I recognize that I have a lot of discrepancy and a lot of leeway there. I think that you as a board also have some input there. So sort of depends on a little bit on what material deviate and what your goals look like. I would be happy to, for next month, if you want to know how long it will take me to bring us into compliance, I could to be fully compliant there. I could certainly do that for next month.
It might be helpful us to consider when we review this again. So when do we recheck?
I will tell you that you won't be in full compliance because the cycle that you're going to operate under to become in full compliance is a contractual year.
So it's July 1st.
It's the first, that would be the first move that I have to do it. And if you're material out, you might think that it's going to take me more than one contract to bring things into line.
That would be fine.
Yep.
It's just part of what we just need to be aware that we're in partial compliance.
Mhm.
We've got a plan.
Mhm.
I think we as board members need to be, is this reasonable?
Yeah.
given the circumstances, is it a reasonable? And
That's it.
that's what we have to judge as a board in accepting this is,
Yeah.
he's got a plan, he knows he's not in compliance, he's got a plan for getting into compliance, it just may take a while. We were out of compliance,
Before I,
superintendent ago.
Yeah.
We were out of compliance with another thing, and it took a little while to get in compliance. It's just getting the board to remember that when he's out of compliance, that doesn't mean, oh my God, he's not doing his job. It's just, he's working on something, and we need to be just sort of aware. We need to be saying, okay, well, when do you think you're gonna be compliant, and checking up as we go along. It's not an adversarial, it's more just sort of being clear and making sure we know kind of what's going.
I think that's the important part of this part of this piece of policy governance. This is, the more I'm looking at this, these reports are how you actually evaluate me each month, right? It's the boards that I've traditionally worked for. Right about now, I'd be writing in my annual mid-year self-evaluation, or I would have done that just before the changeover, so that the old board, that would have been given to the board in February, so that they can approve it, and so that the people in the new meeting can see where I was for the year. What you all do, because we're policy governance, is Martha, as a new board member, can come in and say, hey, which executive limitations has he talked about already? What does that look like? How is he doing in these areas so far? And we all still have a bunch to go to kind of see. I appreciate that this is the opportunity, and by putting partial compliance there, it sort of forces a conversation for us to be able to have to say, hey, here's what's not lining up. And I suspect there could be times where I might not be lining up because of actions that you take, right? So I might be out of compliance. I might be out of compliance because of something I did. I might be out of compliance because of the system as a whole. I might be out of compliance because the loss has changed and the limitation might not be accurate. There's a whole bunch of reasons that we could be where we are. So, and me saying, I appreciate that you saying out loud so that the whole world is seeing it, being out of compliance doesn't necessarily mean the sky is, in this case, it certainly doesn't mean the sky is falling.
You
Right?
don't need a no confidence vote tonight then?
No.
Will we add compliance on this policy left?
Yes. Yes, we were,
Well,
but not
not
according to the.
interpretation, which my problem with the system is Michael has noticed that we are and brought it to our attention, whereas in the past, we weren't given the information.
Our policy says that we won't establish or change compensation and benefits. Or that the superintendent will not change compensation and benefits that deviate materially from the geographical or professional market for the skilled employee. So that's the superintendent's limitation. And we as a board did not catch.
Because we didn't see it.
I'm still not seeing what it is that is wrong.
He has said he's reviewed some contracts. He's not gonna tell you which ones right here in open session. because,
In last
contracts.
month's executive session, I brought you comps. And some of those comps looked like they were, to me, I would say they materially deviate. You could tell me that they don't materially deviate and you're perfectly happy with that. That's just exactly where you want to be. To me, that's how I see it. Right? And
Every superintendent's gonna interpret
That
this
it-
policy
Okay.
a little bit different.
So the way that you worded it, the way that the way that limitation is worded, is it leaves things open to interpretation. If you wanted it not to be open to interpretation, instead of materially deviate, you would say not be X percentage higher or lower. Right? So you've left that room there for the superintendent to have the wiggle room. What I'm doing as a superintendent is I'm coming back and I'm saying, okay, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with that. And yet I understand that I could say it does not materially deviate because I walked in, the salaries were, you set them. They were set last year. It was not materially deviating last year. But this is the place where the interpretation. And so I think what this allows us to do, what I think about policy governance is, again, I'm 9 months into policy governance. I think that what the executive limitation reports, the monitoring reports that you're getting from me do, is they force me to think about what's going on, and they force you to think about my response to what I think is going on. And if I just could if I walked in every time and just said, oh, yep, they're great, then it's just paperwork being passed back and forth. That I think this is a place for us to tune our relationship together to say, hey, here's what it is. Because I think while I'm looking at the executive limitations, I got to be frank, I think you should be looking at the executive limitations and saying, is this really the guide rails that we want to put on? Or as the module said this time, are these the brakes that we want the superintendent to have? Right?
So that's where I'm saying we could, if we're not comfortable with that, we can, in number 3, we can dive down and be more specific. Don't go, above such and such. And that, but what you have to remember is that then it really squeezes him down. And I'm finally remembering one of the non-compliances, not with the last superintendent, but the one before the other one. We had a non-compliance because we had, in order to hang on to someone that was sort of hard to come by, he deviated. So he was always non-compliant, but the board was okay with that non-compliance because we were given a rationale for the non-compliance and I will be in compliance once that particular specialty, that when there's an abundance of those folks around and I have the choice that I have, but when I've got a niche area that I'm trying to fill as a superintendent and I'm really struggling to find someone and I can offer them a 2-year contract instead of 1, or I can bump their salary up, 5,000 in order to lure them to us. That's where this kind of system also gives the flexibility to the manager.
What I want to commend Michael on
Justify
though
what they're doing.
is that comparing with last year, it was in compliance. Comps, you can you can mold to fit your narrative, right? So find a comp that works with what you need it to. What Michael has done and what I want to commend Michael for is giving us that whole, what was it, a 3-page document, 2-page document? I mean, that so that we could have a broader picture. Is that required? No. Last year, we accepted that he was in compliance because it didn't deviate from something. It did deviate from something else. And what Michael is doing is showing us both,
The other
which is very useful.
issue with getting super specific in the policy is the deviation is going to change every year based on whatever the other district is doing. So,
Right.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Anyways,
So this is a time where we're tuning, right? I'm brand new. I'm expecting to stick around for a while. I think you want me to stick around for a while. And so we're figuring out what's the language. How are we gonna figure out how this is gonna work?
Like, I mean, it seems like this comes free about the professional market and what you've done executive function, executive session last time. Been talking too much about executive function. But that's like a useful way to think about what we should expect should happen in these kinds of, in how we think about compliance with these policies, right? And that like we should expect you as a superintendent to present us with that kind of information so that we can see how you're in compliance or not. But anyway, leave it in.
Well, I think what you would do to do that, right, is that you would provide a more specific end, or you could provide a more specific end, or you could provide a more specific executive limitation, right? So you could say, one of the things that you expect from me is you'd like to see the comps for every single position. I'm not in a spot where I'm ready to do that for you, but if you as a board decided that that was one of the things that you wanted, there's a way in policy governance for you to get that. Right? And I think that that's up to you. My take is, once I've tuned with you and I understand what materially deviate means, then I understand how to stay within that and tell you whether I'm materially deviating. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the board signs off on all the contracts in this district.
Yes, that's by state law.
So that means that as a board, you see every single contract and you put a signature on every single contract. So if you saw something that you said, wait, what's going on with this? That might prompt you to say, that seemed like a weird number.
So we do have an executive session that has to do with this tonight. So I'm going to ask if there is a motion to accept this EL report 2.7. Thank you, Rachel. And a seconding. Further discussion? All those in favor, visibly audibly? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you for fruitful discussion. Okay. A man who has to be at work very early in the morning, like he does every morning. Thank you for being so patient and for being here, Mr. Worley, to talk about the quarterly facilities monitoring.
Oh, ma'am, thank you very much for the introduction. I'm here to answer questions.
Oh,
What the board had as a question, you reviewed your packet, reviewed the facility report, and I would know most of you and see you in the community, and I know that you are very much aware of it. Thank you for that, right from the West End on. So any questions that you guys have?
What's
You
gonna
don't
blow?
count.
What's gonna blow next?
You know what I mean?
Nothing, Sam. Sam, the answer is nothing.
he asked what's going to blow next. And
Nothing,
Michael said
nothing, Bob, nothing.
He said nothing 14 times.
Respectfully, publicly, I'm gonna knock you out.
Should we also ask?
I say that endearingly because, as you all know, we have very few things there. We just keep on picking away. This site, which, Sherry did not bring up, has some issues. Just keep on working through that. With the staff that we have, we're doing an exceptional job.
So he asked about what's gonna blow up, what's gonna leak.
Same answer.
So Martha, one of the, like, the example that I use on a regular basis is there is a transformer, electrical transformer that has, Bob, if I'm wrong, you can tell me I'm wrong, but I think it has 150 gallons of mineral oil in it. It was installed in the high school when the high school was built. The high school is approaching 76 years.
It's a year
Right.
older than mine.
Okay,
So
so,
28.
So it's
so,
pushing 70, I think 67 years old.
okay, so
Okay?
when we had the engineers around and they presented, a transformer has a life expectancy of approximately maybe 30 years. Right? So that is just one example that was brought to my attention probably in the first 2 or 3 weeks that I was here. And this is why we're where we are with the facilities and the need to replace. If it was just that one thing, that would be fairly benign and okay. We could probably figure that out, but you know that one transformer is not the only thing that was installed in the 1950s in that building, and a lot of electrical in there. They don't make them like they used to. That's true, right? I mean, a 70-year-old transformer that's built today is probably not gonna happen. It's gonna be not working. Oh, I did tell you I wanted to hear from you tonight, didn't I?
I do have a question.
So what kind of other equipment along those lines do we have that we should be aware of as a board that maybe?
I'm not
aware of, but maybe others are.
I'd point you towards the link that was in so the whole facility, there's a whole community meeting, facilities report, those kinds of things. I think that the engineers came and spoke at quite some time. The list is pretty extensive.
That was the feasibility study.
Yeah.
By the
Yeah.
I have a quick question about that. I see that line, the OSSD line, the feasibility study for potential for new school by Lindbergh Architect. The status is still in progress, and I'm just wondering if.
That is complete.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought.
And you want to put your question, you asked me, are you gonna see what invoices coming in on that or?
No, I was just curious if we were expecting to hear more or something.
Okay, no, not really. Now, you know, the conversation, the superintendent was coming to me and say, hey, you look at this, and I want a third party. I mean, I could come up and let you know, we can provide you an answer, but I think it's beneficial to have a third party do that. It'll go through us, of course, but, so if that comes up, so I don't want to close the book on it yet.
Cool, thank you.
I think that the other answer I'd say to that is we'll say that one's complete when we've got a decision about what we're doing.
Very
Well, I have a question, because I see on here renovation of media center and renovation of RUHS auditorium. And I just, is that how, I mean, that looks like it's planned. I know we're waiting to kind of see where the state is going, and that's gonna be, now it sounds like it's gonna be a few years before we know what's going on. And if I recall from the folks with the feasibility study, as soon as we start tampering with something that's gotten grandfathered in terms of a bunch of regulations and requirements, when we start renovating things,
You got to bring it all up to code.
it's gotta be all up to code. And then what if in 4 years they say, okay, actually, we've got some money. We could replace that building, then we tear it all out, and that's my concern.
All these are related to each other, yes.
Yeah,
I'm glad you began I'm gonna approach the boards, not to intimidate, but so I can hear.
Yeah.
yeah.
You started because the renovation of the media center and auditorium, is that correct?
Mhm.
Yeah, I wouldn't touch that, Tommy. And I would very, very strongly advise that we don't do that right now. For the reasons that Mr. Clark just brought up and that you agreed to be, were aware of. In addition to that, for the secondary thing about feasibility and the education complex. Make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah, don't throw money away.
Yeah.
And you're talking like, when I redid the media center and the auditorium, or not the media center, but the auditorium in Virginia, well, that was a $4 million project. That's pre-COVID, of course, it was like 10 years ago. You know, that's a lot of money, so you can add 50% of that. An auditorium here is worse than it is. So I wouldn't touch it.
All right, I just see that they're
And
creeping
by the
up
way,
on the list,
He
so I'm like,
brought
what
up
are
one
we?
that, you know, there's more than one transformer at that site too. Just saying. So now you know what keeps me up at night.
So it's, from what I read today on the VSBA newsletter that came in my email was, and I went and read the short list on the bill for school construction. That's in the house, that's in House Committee now. So I guess that's probably something we should be paying attention to see what the timeline is on that funding. I don't know if we've heard back from any, or where we're at on the conversation with neighboring districts, but they're trying to prioritize funding around that model of joint facilities.
Sam, I would say that we've heard back from one of the communities, and we have a community that is not in as fortunate of a place as us as having passed a budget. Right? So we had basically said we were going to have the conversation once we had a budget. One of the people that are interested in potentially partnering with us does not have a budget. I think we're being respectful at the moment. Yeah.
Any other questions? See you guys tomorrow.
Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Thanks, Bob.
Turn the page here. No policy decisions to make tonight, but that does mean next month, I believe we'll have a few first reads. Is that
I think that's true.
okay? The self-evaluation, the global governance management connection, this all, I think, works really well with us kind of reviewing our rules and how we function. This one is one thing for us to evaluate, that the board's sole official connection to the operational organization, its achievements, and its conduct will be through the superintendent of schools. So how I interpret that is anything organizational staff other than Michael, those are not people we go to for information as board members. We go to Michael, and by hiring him, we have delegated the work of then going to staff members to him. Very, very important. And in terms of asking Michael for anything, there's got to be 5 of us. Right? We can, don't get me wrong, you can email Michael, you can, call.
You should email.
You should, yes.
And
But in terms of delegating anything to him, that takes 5 of us. And we may not delegate to anyone else, either individually or as a board. Easy. Yeah.
I think when you reach out to me, if it's something easy and fast, I'm probably going to get it to you. If you're asking me to do something that is super time consuming and whatnot, I'm probably going to say, we should talk about that at the board meeting and
You
see
absolutely.
if there are
should
5
say
people that
yes.
want that.
Yes.
Well, I've not independently asked them to do special favors or anything, so I think we're doing pretty good on that.
Does anyone have any questions about this policy? It's short, but it's a biggie. Comments, concerns?
Give me an example of something that's happened along these lines in the past year.
So it hasn't. In fact, I would rate us, it's kind of self-evaluation, I'd rate us as doing very well. Michael, one of my favorite things about Michael in this position is that he's so communicative. So he brings things to us here if he thinks it needs to be discussed by the board. I think we're in a unique position where Michael is learning about policy governance, and so are we. Again, what am I, 5 years in or something, still learning. It's always going to be a learning process, but it needs to be transparently learned.
So we would
in front
judge,
of the public. No, that's fine.
so we would judge ourselves poorly on this if hypothetically we were like individually attempting to micromanage the principals or something like that.
Even as a group attempting to micromanage, but yes, if we were going to Kara and asking her to put together a report about attendance
Right.
at Brookfield Elementary.
Got
That would be against this policy. Asking Michael to bring that kind of information, the board has to ask Michael to ask Kara. The board, exactly.
And then I have to figure out how I'm gonna get that. And that, I might not even ask Kara. I might just pull a report out of Power School, have a data person, just say, here it is. This is the report that you're looking for. I don't need to have Kara come and do that. Right? So
Yes,
that
absolutely.
leaves,
We ask for information as a board, not individually from Michael. He gets it however he's gonna get it and brings it back to us.
Yep.
All right, cool. Then we're gonna move on. Consent agenda. Anyone have anything from, I'll start with the last regular board meeting? Any concerns with minutes? Okay.
we'll say that you've got a straggling bullet on the next page for the consent agenda.
I have a straggling bullet.
So the
Oh,
con-
from last time?
No, the consent agenda is the 2 minutes and the new hires
Yes.
sit there.
Yes,
So that-
thank you. Okay. Well, I'm just starting with the February 12th though.
Yep.
Next, I'm going to the March 3rd.
Yes, I think there is a correction on this one. The final line, the motion to adjourn the meeting at 6:23 p.m. was made by Joe Roach. Really? Okay. Didn't think the public would.
Yeah, it's not a.
It's not a board meeting.
It's not a
Oh,
board
okay,
meeting.
cool.
It's a meeting because it's-
Good. All right, thank you very much.
Good question. Okay, and now new hires. Okay, I'm gonna entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as all in one enchilada.
So moved.
Thank you, Emile. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Anne. Further discussion? All those in favor, visibly audibly, please. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Okay, superintendent's report, financial report.
Making me work really fast. If I work fast and hard here, huh? There we go.
1 minute.
So I'm going to do something that I don't usually do, and I'm going to do it in under a minute. You have my superintendent's report. I think it's pretty clear what's going on with that. Most of the time, that's what I say to you here. The next thing I am going to say that did not make it into my superintendent's report, and I don't want to wait till next month to make sure that you hear and understand this, is the federal government right now is doing some pretty major things with the Department of Education. We have Heather 13 grant-funded positions.
Yes.
And those grant-funded positions, well, I believe that the money's there. I can't guarantee that the money for next year is there. That means that in addition to the RIF notices that happened as a result of the budget, we have a number of RIF notices that will go out because we don't know if the revenue from those grants will come in. And so that's going to create some stress and anxiety around. I think that's important for you to know. And again, I'm going to say it so that everybody hears as part of it. I expect that the money that has been promised for those grants will come through. I don't know how they're going to come through. I don't know what department, what agency is going to distribute them. But if they really did or are cutting the U.S. Education Department by 50%, I think that's going to sort of change the way that things operate, might change the timing of how things operate.
Is it possible for us to get information about which programs come under that these federal grants?
Or the
Sure.
positions.
I mean, I want to know about programs and positions.
Sure, I will tell you that Heather is right in on this, but I would say most of our interventionists are through grants
Intervention.
and then STEM.
Intervention STEM, some of our physical education, some of our social work funded through various federal grants. Also, when you say programs, we're counting on grants coming up to continue farm to school, our STEM programming, robotics programming. I had focused much more on the positions than the programs, but artists in residence, global music, all grant funded. Our family engagement evening events that we do across the district at various levels, all grant funded. I really do think that because these grants are forward funded, that we are good for one more year. What I'm really concerned about is the year after that.
So forward funded means
Congress has already approved the money from this coming school year, 25-26. So it would take the approval of Congress or some other emergency to pull that money back. I'm sorry, what was?
Like, who administers these? Are they from the Department of Ed?
So the federal Department of Ed works directly with the state, and the state acts as essentially the fiscal agent for the money that comes from the federal government. So in all likelihood, like what Heather's talking about, what's happened is the money has flowed to the state or will flow to the state, and then so it's already there, and then it'll flow to us from the state.
So we have not yet received an allocation. Once we receive an allocation, we can be much more confident that the money will be coming.
And any sense of timelines?
Typically, we get our allocation at the end of April.
And I would not expect it any earlier than that, given the situation at the state and the federal government. So we're sort of getting squeezed from both ends right at the moment.
Are there any impacts at this time for special education? Because I know a lot of that is federal.
A great point. I didn't mention that. A lot of that is federal. Yes, I should have included that in programs.
Special ed going for early childhood special ed going through some sort of grant, or is that not a federal grant?
That's not managed in Vermont, isn't managed at the school level. That's managed by primarily parent-child centers throughout the state. Birth history.
Something in the budget that I thought was that it was some kind of early childhood special ed, I thought, that said zero because everything was like coming from some grant.
Comment on where Let's Grow Kids come in that theme probably that.
Let's Grow Kids is, I think, is a state organization or an NGO.
Yeah, they're a permanent fund that is like an NGO that is now funded mostly from payroll tax. That's the.
Yeah.
We have an issue every year with grant funded positions where we grant them every year. And we don't have the guarantee of funds. How is this, I mean, other than being a little more uncertain about whether the grant funds could flow, how is this year?
I had hoped
You
to.
don't know because you're not.
No, I do know because it is a big deal. And I had hoped to come to you with a workaround for that. But because the money is so certain, I think that there's a pretty straightforward workaround that would involve, I would bring Rob in so that the team had some agreement and whatnot to you to say, there's a workaround. But with the money being as uncertain as it is right now, I would not be being fiscally responsible to try that workaround. If I'm in a spot where, because we won't have our allocation, typically the challenge that you would have is you wouldn't know what the allocation was going to be. Heather has a pretty good idea of what the allocation was going to be. And if on a $27 million budget, I was going to be off by $100,000 either way, or maybe even $200,000 either way. I think there's some places within our fiscal makeup that we could offset that. I'll leave it at that for the moment. Because I don't think that we can do it for all of the grant fund, more than $1 million,
So it's more than $1 million,
right?
that,
For all these things.
right, that we, in various ways secure through grant funding, yes. And
So what we're doing is we're working on getting, when we do our agenda planning next time, you're going to hear our comprehensive needs assessment, continuous improvement plan, that kind of thing is going to be pushing it up a little earlier than what I think you typically would approve, so that that will allow us to submit the grant as soon as it becomes available. I do think that, Rachel, the question that you're asking is really similar to what's going on. Maybe the difference is it's probably a little harder to sit there and say, I'm absolutely confident that the money is going to be there. Whereas if I were in that boat and doing that in years past here, I would have had no problem saying, yes, I've got to give you a RIF notice, but I'm still going to say I'm pretty confident that the money's going to be there, right? And I have, before contracts go out, I still have 33 days, right? So I'm going to know more as time goes, and that may change my opinion. But as of today, right this second, I'm still expecting to get all of the funds that we would typically get. And I would still expect that all of the people, so Heather and I have spent several hours together. I've spent time with the association. I've spent time with Amy trying to figure out how all the RIFs fit together. But I'm sure I have more than one full work day of just figuring out where all the bumps are, meaning that this person's more senior, and when they get a RIF, it actually impacts somebody who's not in the position that's affected by money so the grant funded person has access to a locally funded job, right? But there's all of
Because of
this moving
seniority.
parts because of seniority. Yeah. So trying to make sure that that's all untangled and trying to lay it out in a way that doesn't cause mass chaos. So Heather and I spent more than an hour with the association on Tuesday night, talking and making sure that, hey, here's how I interpret it. It's Article 7 of your master agreement with them, but making sure here's how I interpret this language. Do you interpret it this way? So that we could work out if either of us interpreted it a different way, I'd rather know that going in than give people RIF notices. And then the next thing I get is from the association, the grievance that says you didn't follow the process, right? So much like I'm calibrating with the board, I'm calibrating with the association as well, trying to figure out how they see it. Does it line up with how I see it? What does it look like? And some of the good news is, so with the association, one of the things I got to say was no paraeducator is going to get a RIF notice. All of the paraeducation positions that we cut 4, and all 4 of those positions are open today. So the RIF notices will go to the open positions, right? So we've essentially, what I'm telling you is, out of next year's budget, we cut 4 positions that aren't filled right now in this year's budget, right? So the teaching scenario before we get into these grant things is also pretty light. It was less than 2, the equivalent of 2 FTEs of teaching positions that are related to the budget. There are some that are related to the enrollment at RTCC too. And I'm doing a terrible job of being quick there, but I do think those are the things that's going on with the faculty and staff right now, and things that they're worried about. Right. And so that's what I want to make you aware of, that what's happening at the national level is impacting us at the local level, at least temporarily. And that I don't expect it's going to impact us long-term.
So Vermont AOE is basically, a holding pattern on funding. Once they release or give you your allocation, you said in April, then they're gonna have to start strategizing about what's gonna happen next year. If the assumption is that a lot of these programs, there's gonna be an effort to cut that.
I would expect that the Vermont AOE is looking at a lot of things about how the funding next year might work, given the timeline that they're considering for some of the local changes, as well as the changes that are happening at the federal level. Right? And I do think that as of right now, Congress has allocated funds and has not stopped allocating those funds. Right? I guess I did not look at what was passed yesterday. I have not yet had time to say, what did the House pass in the continuing resolution? Right? That's funding us through September. One would take it that the way I took the reporting of it is if they funded it through September, then that's good news because they essentially funded things, what I heard in news reports was more or less where we are now. So I think that, and that's consistent with a continuing resolution. So that's part of the piece that helps us think that we might be okay. I wouldn't have been surprised if today's VSBA had some language about that. And if it doesn't, it's just because they haven't digested it yet. So I'd be looking for it in next week's VSBA update. I have not seen something when I came over to the office from the office about the VSA yet, digesting it. And they usually work together to create those things. So I think we don't really know right at the moment. So I don't want to cause a bunch of chaos and concern and whatnot. I do want to make sure that we're aware and that we know that maybe it's as important that you know that as a cabinet, as a leadership team, we're looking at those things and paying attention to what's going on and saying, hey, what do we need to do? Because you can imagine that if we had to cut $1 million worth of programs, people out of the budget because we don't have revenue for it, what that would look like.
So then, yeah,
That's why they're getting the RIF notices so that we have the flexibility to do that. I don't know what it really looks like if we actually thought we would have to do it. I would be coming back to you, I am sure, in a different way.
Yeah, my biggest concern is state of Vermont legislature not having a funding formula for us before next budget season. Federal education weaseling their way out of funding commitments, which they've done for the last 40 years.
Yeah.
And that's only on steroids right now. And then us just making sure we have a plan for where we're going to make up the gap.
Yep.
and how we maintain our legal and ethical responsibilities to our state.
Yep. That's gonna be my answer. That's my rest of the answer for the night. Yep.
That's a tomorrow question.
Let's get
Yeah.
this, let's get the funding figured out for the third, let's see what we get allocated.
That's right.
Thank you for that information.
Well, thanks for paying attention to it.
Yeah.
And then I would just say in this section, I'm going to jump from the superintendent's report to the facility or to the financial that I added at the beginning. So Robin's financial is in the packet. You saw as you looked through it, things are looking good. I talked with her today. We're looking good for a smaller than last year's surplus, but a surplus nonetheless. And I actually think that's good at bringing us more in line with what we budgeted. So we're more on track for that. We don't have concerns financially right at the moment. We would say we're on track.
Anyone have any questions for Michael about his report? Reports. Let's see, we have a few resignations there listed just for information.
Action item recap. There's not a whole lot after this one. I mean, I think despite it almost being 8 o'clock, the intent was to have this be a somewhat lighter meeting because it's reorganization and realigning. I don't think there's a whole lot of action to take except doing our homework. Right, I'm staying informed. So at this time, I will entertain a motion to go into executive session, and whoever makes that motion, please be clear about who will be there. And by that, I mean executive session means board members. So if there is anyone we want in the executive session who is not a board member and whose name rhymes with Schmeichel, please make that clear. And Schmether, please make that clear in your motion. Thank you. Anyway.
I think you also want to add, in keeping with the Title I, Section 313 contracts, contractual negotiations.
Include the reason we are going into executive session.
So if I were making the motion, it would be, I move to go into executive session at 7:52 per Title I, Section 313 contract negotiations, and would invite Michael and Heather to that executive session. That would be the motion I would propose.
Can
if
I
were
just say
proposing
so
it.
moved?
You could.
Do I have a second? I'm gonna take a refill. Further discussion? All those in favor of entering executive session at 7:53, visibly audibly? Aye. Opposed, abstentions? Great. Thank you for coming.
You know, I'm gonna do something.